This is what happens when the avoidant realizes they've truly lost you. When someone who has been emotionally distant or avoidant suddenly realizes that they've truly lost you, everything changes. It's like a light bulb goes off and they are faced with the consequences of their actions. They can't escape from the reality that the opportunity to love and connect has slipped away. This moment can be powerful, not just for them, but also for you. You see, avoidant person often lives in a state of defense, protecting themselves from vulnerability. They keep others at arm's length, telling themselves it's easier to be alone than to risk opening up and being hurt. But deep down, they still crave connection. And when they realize you're really gone, that realization cuts deeper than any distance they've ever tried to put between themselves and others. The truth is, they never thought you'd leave. They never imagined the day would come when they'd have to face the reality of their own avoidance. But it happens. And here's what that moment of realization really means for them. And for you, when the avoidant person suddenly realizes they've lost you, it's like a punch to the gut. For so long, they lived in their own bubble, convinced that their emotional distance was a form of self-preservation, a way to avoid the risk of getting hurt. They built walls around themselves, not just to keep others at bay, but to keep themselves safe from the very possibility of real connection. But now, when the reality sets in that you are truly gone, that their avoidance has cost them something irreplaceable, they are faced with an overwhelming sense of loss. It's not just the absence of you, it's the realization that their actions, their constant pushing and pulling led to this moment. For the avoidant, this isn't just a simple breakup or an end to a relationship, it's the shattering of an illusion. They often live with the belief that if they keep their emotional distance, they can control the outcome. They can keep things on their terms without ever being vulnerable, without ever giving anyone the power to hurt them. But the moment they realize they've lost you, it's a stark confrontation with the truth. They've spent so much energy avoiding that love, connection, and real intimacy are not something you can control by staying distant. They realize they've been playing a dangerous game where the rules always favored them remaining untouchable, but now they see the consequences of that approach. They've lost something valuable, not just in terms of the relationship itself, but in the emotional bond that could have been built. This moment of realization doesn't come with any immediate sense of relief or comfort for the avoidant. Instead, it's filled with panic and a deep sense of fear. The control they once felt is now slipping away, and they are left grappling with an emotion they've spent so long suppressing: regret. It's the overwhelming awareness that the person they cared about, the person who was willing to love them unconditionally, is now out of reach. It's an emotional reckoning they can't escape from, no matter how much they try to rationalize or justify their behavior. What's even more unsettling is that they can no longer hide behind their defenses. The walls they built to protect themselves have now become the very thing that keeps them from experiencing the love they sought to avoid in the first place. The absence of you is more than just a physical void. It's the echo of their own actions, a painful reminder that their fear of intimacy has led them to this point of isolation. And as they begin to process this, it becomes clear that the avoidance they once believed would protect them has only deepened their loneliness. The realization that they have truly lost you is a jarring wake-up call for the avoidant person. For a long time, they have been able to exist in a state of emotional detachment, keeping their distance, avoiding any deeper connection, and justifying their behavior with a sense of self-protection. They told themselves that keeping things casual or not fully opening up was the best way to avoid getting hurt. They could always convince themselves that it wasn't a matter of not caring, but rather a matter of protecting their heart. But when you walk away for good, it forces them to confront the one they've been running from, the vulnerability of having a real, meaningful relationship. This wake-up call doesn't come gently. It's not just a fleeting thought or a passing feeling. It's a moment of clarity that disrupts everything they've built up in their minds about love and connection. Suddenly, they can no longer justify their detachment, the distance they've kept, the walls they've put up, and the emotional games they've played are all laid bare before them. It's a harsh reality, one they can't escape or ignore. They can no longer tell themselves that they were just protecting themselves or that they were simply being realistic about relationships. The truth is right in front of them. They have lost you, and in doing so, they've lost the very thing they were trying to avoid. true love, intimacy, and a real connection. The moment they understand this, the walls they've built start to crumble. For the first time, they might begin to feel something they've been trying to avoiding, the pain of regret. It's a feeling they've suppressed for so long, never allowing themselves to fully experience it, because acknowledging it would require them to admit their own shortcomings. But now, as they see that you're no longer there, they can't help but face the truth. Their actions, their unwillingness to open up and be vulnerable, have cost them something valuable. It's the moment when they realize they've allowed their fear of being hurt to stop them from having the very thing they wanted all along: love. This wake-up call is often accompanied by a sense of panic. They realize they've been living in a self-imposed emotional prison, and now that prison has become their reality. The disconnect they once thought they could handle, the emotional distance they convinced themselves was fine, is now a glaring reminder that their avoidance has not kept them safe. It has isolated them, and in this moment they are forced to reckon with the full weight of their own fear. Once the initial shock of losing you begins to settle, the avoidant person is left with a profound sense of regret. It's not just the surface-level disappointment of the relationship ending. It's a deeper, more unsettling feeling of realizing what they've lost, and more importantly, what they could have had if they hadn't built so many emotional barriers. Regret begins to creep in because, for the first time, they understand the value of what they pushed away. They start to see all the opportunities they missed, the moments they could have been open, the times they could have been vulnerable, the chances to truly connect. These missed opportunities now weigh heavily on their conscience, and it's a painful realization. This regret is powerful because it forces them to take a long, hard look at their own behavior. For the avoidant, emotional distance was once a form of control, something they relied on to keep themselves safe. But in this moment, they start to recognize that their avoidance wasn't about protecting themselves. It was about keeping themselves from fully experiencing the intimacy and love they secretly longed for. They now see that by pushing you away, they were only sabotaging themselves. What they wanted was the very thing they feared most: a deep, meaningful connection. But in their fear of vulnerability, they missed the opportunity to nurture that bond. As the regret sets in, it often leads to a period of intense self-reflection. The avoidant starts to ask themselves why they acted the way they did. They may revisit past conversations, moments in the relationship where they could have opened up, where they could have made a different choice. Why didn't they share more of themselves when they had the chance? Why did they hold back when you were offering them love and understanding? These questions become a painful but necessary part of their journey as they realize that their own walls and fears kept them from truly experiencing the potential of the relationship. For the avoidant, this moment of regret isn't just about the loss of you, it's about the loss of themselves too. They come to understand that by avoiding intimacy, they also avoided their own emotional growth. The walls they built to protect themselves from getting hurt have now become the very things that keep them from experiencing the love and connection they desire. This regret is not something they can easily dismiss or ignore. It forces them to confront the emotional price they've paid for living in a state of avoidance. And for the first time, they have to face the reality that their own fear, not the actions of others, is what led to their heartbreak. For the avoidant, facing the truth about the loss of you is one of the hardest things they will ever have to do. Their entire emotional framework is built around avoiding vulnerability, and to truly acknowledge that they've lost you means they must confront the fear and discomfort they've worked so hard to keep at bay. At the heart of their behavior is an intense fear of intimacy, of opening up to another person, of allowing themselves to be seen in a way that could potentially lead to hurt. This fear has always been easier to hide behind than to face head on. But now that they realize they've lost you, this fear is no longer something they can ignore. When they come to terms with the fact that they've lost you, there's a moment of panic. It's as if their emotional defenses, the walls they've so carefully constructed over the years, are crumbling. In that moment, they're forced to reckon with everything they've been running from: their fear of rejection, their fear of being emotionally dependent on someone else, and the possibility of being hurt by someone they let in. This fear was their shield for so long, but now, without you, it's exposed. They are left vulnerable, And that vulnerability feels terrifying because it forces them to acknowledge that their need for emotional protection has cost them the most important connection they could have had. What makes this confrontation with the truth even harder is that the avoidant person often doesn't know how to process their emotions. They've spent so much of their life hiding from their feelings that they're not equipped to handle the overwhelming rush of emotions that come with realizing they've lost someone they care about. The instinct is to withdraw, to hide, to avoid feeling anything at all. But when you're gone, that withdrawal only deepens their sense of loss and forces them to confront what they've been avoiding all along, the fear that, by keeping themselves distant, they never allowed themselves to truly experience love. In the face of this truth, they often shut down or try to deflect. They may try to make excuses or blame external circumstances, as it's easier than accepting responsibility for their own actions. The truth, for the avoidant, is a bitter pill to swallow because it means admitting that their fear of intimacy, their reluctance to fully commit, has led to their own heartbreak. The longer they refuse to face it, the more they spiral into regret and confusion. But eventually, they must come to terms with it, and that confrontation is one of the hardest emotional battles they will face. As the avoidant person begins to process the loss of you, something begins to shift within them. This painful moment of realization can sometimes spark a deeper introspection that wasn't there before. It's the first time they may truly start to examine the way they've approached relationships and the role fear has played in shaping their behavior. Until now, they've lived under the assumption that emotional distance is necessary for self-preservation, that keeping others at arm's length protects them from potential hurt. But as they grapple with the loss, they begin to see how these defenses have actually prevented them from experiencing the depth of love and intimacy they've always longed for. The walls they built to keep themselves safe now feel more like a prison, keeping them locked away from the very thing they crave. This shift in perspective doesn't happen overnight, but it's often the beginning of an important internal transformation. For the first time, the avoidant might start to question whether their approach to relationships has been serving them or sabotaging them. They begin to wonder if avoiding vulnerability was truly protecting them, or if it's been the source of their own isolation and loneliness. They may not yet have the tools to make immediate changes, but the realization starts to dawn on them that a different way of relating to others is possible, one that doesn't require building walls or shutting themselves off from the world. This awareness can be uncomfortable because it forces them to confront their own fears and insecurities. In a sense, it challenges everything they thought they knew about love and connection. They might realize that their fear of being hurt or rejected led them to push away someone who could have been their partner, someone who was willing to invest in the relationship. This recognition is both humbling and painful because it means that their fear of vulnerability ultimately cost them the chance to build something real and lasting. As they reflect on their behavior, there is a chance that the avoidant person might begin to understand that emotional openness and vulnerability are not weaknesses but sources of strength. They may start to see that true intimacy isn't about being perfect or controlling every aspect of the relationship. It's about allowing themselves to be seen and understood by another person, flaws and all. While this perspective shift is a gradual process, it can lay the foundation for future growth. The avoidant begins to realize that by allowing themselves to feel and be vulnerable, they open the door to a deeper, more meaningful connection with others, something they may have resisted for so long, but now see as the key to emotional fulfillment. When you walk away from an avoidant person, it's not just a closure for the relationship, it's a profound reclamation of your own power. The decision to leave is often difficult, especially when the person you care about is emotionally distant or has a tendency to withdraw. But in making that choice, you are asserting your own worth and showing yourself that you deserve more than just the crumbs of affection or the emotional unavailability they offer. For the avoidant, this moment of your departure is a stark reminder that their behavior has consequences. The distance they put between you and their unwillingness to engage fully in the relationship has pushed you to a point where leaving is the only viable option. As you walk away, it's a silent but strong statement that you won't continue to pour into a relationship where your emotional needs are unmet. For the avoidant, this can be both a wake-up call and a source of intense frustration. They may have been convinced that they could continue with their emotional detachment, that they could maintain control over their feelings and the relationship. But when you leave, that control slips away. In that moment, you've taken back the power that was once in their hands. You are no longer waiting for them to figure things out, no longer waiting for them to choose you, no longer waiting for them to meet you halfway. You've decided that your time, your energy, and your heart are valuable, and you will not settle for someone who isn't ready or willing to show up fully. This is where your power truly lies. Walking away from the avoidant doesn't just mean leaving them behind, it means taking the first step in a new direction. One that is focused on your own growth, self-love, and emotional fulfillment. It's a choice that reflects strength, self-respect, and an understanding of your worth. You are not depending on them to validate your feelings or to define your happiness. In that moment, you've made it clear to yourself and to them that you are ready to move forward and open yourself to relationships that align with the love and emotional connection you deserve. For the avoidant, this moment can be disorienting. They might have expected you to always be there, despite the emotional distance. But your departure forces them to recognize that they no longer hold the upper hand. The power dynamic has shifted, and in that shift, you are free to seek a relationship that nourishes and fulfills you, something they could never provide when they were unwilling to fully invest. You've closed a chapter, but also opened the door to something better, and this newfound freedom is a source of profound strength. When the avoidant realizes they've truly lost you, they are confronted with the harsh truth of their own emotional barriers. For so long, they thought they could protect themselves by keeping people at a distance, but in the process, they forgot that true connection requires vulnerability, and when they realize it's too late, when you've made the decision to walk away, they are forced to confront the consequences of their fear and self-protection. But this moment of realization, as painful as it is for them, is also empowering for you. By choosing to walk away, you reclaim your own worth, your own sense of self, and your own power. You've shown yourself that you deserve a love that is open, available, and willing to meet you where you are. The avoidant may never fully understand or appreciate the impact of their actions, but you are no longer waiting for them to figure it out. You've learned your own value, and you are ready to embrace the kind of connection that honors who you are. You don't have to settle for anything less than the love and emotional availability that you deserve. The loss of the avoidant is ultimately a step to a greater self, love, and the opening of new doors for meaningful relationships in your future. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of what happens when the avoidant person realizes they've lost someone who truly cared. I hope this message resonated with you and gave you a sense of clarity and empowerment in your own journey. Remember, relationships are about mutual respect, emotional availability, and growth. Don't settle for less than you deserve. Take care of yourselves, stay strong in your truth, and always remember that you have the power to shape your own emotional well-being. Thank you once again for your time and attention. Wishing you all the best on your journey toward love, growth, and self-empowerment. Goodbye!